Kate Morrison stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, her hands shaking just a little. She had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, and every day felt harder than the last. The huge room was filled with creatures from dozens of different worlds. Some looked like giant bugs, others like walking trees, and a few reminded her of the dinosaurs she had seen in museums as a child. Today was supposed to be different. Today she was going to demand justice for the people who had died on Kepler Station. 200 innocent humans, including families with children, had been killed when the Zephyrian Empire attacked their mining colony. It was the 5th attack in 6 months, and each time the council had done nothing. The speaker of the council was a creature called Vexthera. She stood 12 feet tall with 4 arms and a head that looked like a praying mantis. Her voice made a clicking sound when she spoke, like someone tapping on glass. "Ambassador Morrison," Vexthera clicked, "you may present your complaint." Kate stepped forward and activated the hologram projector. Images filled the air above the council floor. Burning buildings, twisted metal where the space station used to be, bodies of humans who had been trying to evacuate when the Zephyrian ships opened fire. "Honorable council members," Kate began, her voice steady despite her anger. "This is what remains of Kepler Station. The Zephyrians attacked without warning. They targeted civilian areas. They killed children who were in the evacuation shelters." Low murmur went through the hall. Some of the alien representatives seemed shocked by the images. Others looked bored, as if they had seen this kind of thing many times before. The Zephyrian representative, a tall creature with gray skin and no visible eyes, stood up. His name was General Krickstall, and Kate had learned to hate the sound of his voice over the past 3 years. "The humans were mining in disputed territory," he said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "They ignored our warnings to leave. We had every right to defend our claim." "There were no warnings," Kate said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Your ships appeared and started firing immediately. The mining station was completely defenseless." "That is not our problem," Krickstall replied. "Humans are weak. If you cannot defend your colonies, perhaps you should not build them." Several alien representatives made sounds that Kate had learned meant agreement. The Talvesh delegate, who looked like a giant slug with arms, was nodding his massive head. The Koran representative, a creature that reminded Kate of a walking crystal, flashed different colors which she knew meant approval. Kate felt her heart sink. This was exactly what had happened the last 4 times she had come before the council. The same dismissive attitudes, the same refusal to hold the Zephyrians accountable, the same suggestion that humans were somehow to blame for being attacked. "Honorable Speaker," Kate said, "I request that the council impose sanctions on the Zephyrian Empire, economic restrictions, travel bans, anything to show them that these attacks are unacceptable." Vexithara's 4 arms moved in what Kate recognized as the alien equivalent of a shrug. "The council has reviewed your request. We find insufficient evidence of unprovoked aggression. The Zephyrians were defending territory they consider their own." "People are dying," Kate said, and for the first time her voice cracked a little. "Human families are being murdered, and you're calling it a territorial dispute." "Perhaps," said the Talvesh representative in his slow, wet voice, "humans should learn to be stronger. The galaxy is not a safe place for weak species." Kate looked around the hall. Most of the alien representatives were already turning away, losing interest in the proceedings. To them, human deaths were just numbers on a report. The Zephyrians had killed over 1,000 humans in the past year, and the council treated it like a minor disagreement between neighbors. In the observer section, she could see Commander Jack Sullivan watching the proceedings with barely contained rage. He commanded the small human fleet that was stationed above the council world. Kate knew he had lost his brother in the Kepler Station attack. She also knew that his ships carried enough firepower to turn this entire world into a crater, but Earth's orders were clear. Diplomacy first, always diplomacy. Kate pulled out her communication device and sent a coded message back to Earth. It was simple. "They're not listening. Request permission to change approach." The response came back within minutes, also coded. "Maintain diplomatic posture. Continue trying." Kate closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the files she had seen back on Earth, the classified reports that showed what humanity was really capable of. For 3 years, Earth had been playing the role of the peaceful newcomer, the species that preferred talking to fighting. The aliens had no idea what humans had been building in the dark spaces between the stars. Ambassador Morrison, Vexthera clicked. "Do you have anything else to present to the council?" Kate looked up at the towering alien and made her decision. "Yes, I do. I want to make something very clear to this council. Humanity has been patient. We have followed your rules, respected your procedures, and asked politely for justice. But our patience is not unlimited." General Krixtall made a sound. That might have been laughter. "Are you threatening the council, human? Your species has barely left its home system. You have no military power worth mentioning." Kate smiled, and something in her expression made several of the alien representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. "General, you should be very careful about making assumptions. Just because we choose to be civilized doesn't mean we don't know how to be anything else." "Is that supposed to frighten us?" Krixtall asked. "No," Kate said quietly. "This is." She activated her communicator again, this time on an open channel that everyone in the hall could hear. "Commander Sullivan, please transmit authorization code Alpha 77 to Earth Command." Jack Sullivan's voice came through clearly. "Code transmitted, Ambassador. Earth Command acknowledges receipt." Kate looked around the hall at the alien, faces staring at her. "Honorable Council members, that code authorizes Earth to begin Phase 2 protocols. I suggest you ask your intelligence services what that means." She gathered her materials and started walking toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear the confused chittering and clicking of alien voices, trying to figure out what had just happened. As she reached the door, Kate turned back one last time. "General Krixtall, you said humans are weak because we cannot defend our colonies. You're about to learn the difference between choosing not to fight and not being able to fight. The difference is bigger than you can imagine." Outside the hall, Jack Sullivan was waiting for her. His face was grim, but there was something else in his eyes, something that looked like relief. "Kate," he said, "I just received new orders from Earth. The diplomatic phase is officially over. They're sending the real fleet." Kate nodded. She had seen the reports about the real fleet. Ships that had been built in secret shipyards beyond Neptune. Weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Soldiers trained in warfare techniques that would make these aliens' conflicts look like children playing with toys. "How long?" she asked. 72 hours, Jack replied. "After that, anyone who attacks a human colony is going to discover why we spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other before we ever left Earth." Kate looked back at the council building, where the alien representatives were probably still trying to figure out what Phase 2 protocols meant. Soon, they would find out. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to choose when to stop being nice. Admiral Susan Clark sat in her command chair aboard the ESV Retribution, watching the stars streak past as her fleet moved through hyperspace. 72 hours had passed since Ambassador Morrison had sent the authorization code, and now the real human fleet was finally being unleashed. For 3 years, Susan had been forced to hide her ships in the outer darkness beyond Pluto. While the aliens thought humanity only had a few dozen exploration vessels, the truth was very different. Hidden shipyards had been working around the clock, building a war fleet that would make the galaxy's greatest empires look like children with toy boats. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communication station, "we're receiving the distress signal from New Brisbane Colony." Susan's jaw tightened. New Brisbane was home to 50,000 humans, mostly families who had moved there, to start farms and build new lives. The colony had been peaceful, growing food and sending it back to Earth. Now the Zephyrians were attacking it, just like they had attacked all the other human settlements. "Put it on speakers," Susan ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was full of terror. It was Colony Administrator Pete Jackson, and Susan could hear explosions in the background as he spoke. "This is New Brisbane Colony calling for help. The DI. Zephyrians are bombing us from orbit. They're targeting the schools and hospitals. We have thousands of civilians trying to evacuate, but their ships are hunting down our transport vessels. Please, If anyone can hear this, we need help immediately. The transmission cut to static. Susan closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about her own daughter, who was about the same age as many of the children on New Brisbane. When she opened them again, her expression was cold as ice. Communications. Send a message to all ships in the fleet. Operation Revelation is now active. We are no longer pretending to be explorers. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the lead dreadnought in Susan's task force. His ship, the Retribution, was one of humanity's newest and most powerful vessels. Unlike the small exploration ships the aliens had seen before, this was a true warship designed for one purpose: to destroy anything that threatened human lives. "Captain," reported his weapons officer, Chief Danny Murphy, "all systems are coming online. The disguise protocols are disengaging." Ryan watched through the view screen as his ship began to transform. Panels that had made the vessel look like a simple cargo hauler slid away, revealing massive gun batteries underneath. Hidden armor plating extended from the hull. Weapon systems that had been concealed behind false bulkheads powered up for the first time in combat. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark," came the voice over the fleet communications. "We are dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. Remember, these aliens have been killing our people for 3 years while we played nice. Today, we show them what humans are really capable of." The fleet emerged from hyperspace above New Brisbane, and the scene that greeted them made every human on every ship burn with rage. The beautiful blue and green world was scarred with fires where the Zephyrian ships had been bombing civilian targets. Dozens of human transport vessels drifted in space, broken and lifeless. The Zephyrian fleet was still there, 12 heavy cruisers arranged in a bombardment formation around the planet. They had been so confident that no help would come that they hadn't even bothered to post guards. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Foster, "the Zephyrian flagship is hailing us. Its war leader Crixtall himself." "Put him on screen," Susan ordered. The alien's gray face appeared on the view screen, his expression showing the arrogance that had become so familiar to human diplomats. "Human vessels, you will withdraw immediately. This system is under Zephyrian control. Any interference will be considered an act of war." Susan stood up slowly from her command chair. "War Leader Crixtall, I am Admiral Susan Clark of the Terran Defense Force. You have attacked and murdered human civilians. You have exactly 60 seconds to surrender your ships, or we will destroy you." Crixtall made the grinding sound that passed for Zephyrian laughter. "Surrender? To humans? Your species has shown us nothing but weakness for 3 years. You have no military power worth fearing." 50 seconds, Susan said calmly. "You cannot be serious," Crixtall replied. "Our ships outnumber yours, and our weapons are proven in countless battles. What can a few human exploration vessels do against the might of the Zephyrian Empire?" 40 seconds. "And we're not exploration vessels anymore." For the first time, uncertainty crept into the alien's voice. "What do you mean?" Susan smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We mean we're done pretending to be civilized. Communications, open a channel to all ships in both fleets." When the channel opened, Susan's voice carried to every vessel in the system, human and alien alike. For 3 years, humanity has followed the galaxy's rules. We have been polite, diplomatic, and restrained. We have asked nicely for justice and been ignored. We have watched our people die while aliens laughed at our weakness. She paused, letting her words sink in. "But you made a mistake. You thought our civility meant we couldn't fight. You thought our restraint meant we were weak. Today you learn the truth. Humanity has been holding back not because we had to, but because we chose to." On the Zephyrian flagship, Crixtall was beginning to understand that something had changed. The human ships were not moving like the slow, clumsy vessels his forces had encountered before. They were spreading out in a formation he didn't recognize, their movements precise and coordinated. 20 seconds, Susan announced. "This is your final warning." "You're bluffing," Crixtall said, but his voice shook slightly. "Humans don't have real warships. Your species is too soft for true warfare." 10 seconds. "All ships, Prepare to fire. Captain Brooks watched his tactical display as targeting solutions appeared for every Zephyrian vessel. His ship's computers had been analyzing their opponents since the moment they arrived, identifying weak points and calculating the most efficient ways to destroy them. "Weapons ready, sir," Chief Murphy reported. 5 seconds, Susan counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The space around New Brisbane erupted in light as the human fleet opened fire. But these weren't the simple energy weapons the aliens were familiar with. These were weapons based on technologies that the galaxy had never seen before, designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing. The first Zephyrian cruiser simply vanished, vaporized by a concentrated beam of energy that turned its hull into superheated plasma. The second ship lasted slightly longer, its shields holding for almost 3 seconds before collapsing under an assault that was beyond anything its designers had imagined possible. Captain Brooks watched through his view screen as Chief Murphy's weapons tore through the alien formation like a knife through paper. "Sir," the weapons officer reported with grim satisfaction, "enemy shields are completely ineffective against our main batteries. Their armor might as well be made of tissue paper." Across the fleet, human gunners were discovering the same thing. The aliens' supposedly mighty warships had been designed to fight other aliens using similar technologies. They had no defense against weapons developed by a species that had evolved warfare as an art form. Within 5 minutes, 11 of the 12 Zephyrian ships had been destroyed. Only Krixtal's flagship remained, drifting powerless with its engines, dead and weapons offline. Susan opened a communication channel to the crippled vessel. "War Leader Krixtal, your fleet is gone. Your ship is disabled. Do you understand now why humans have been so patient with you?" The alien's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" "We are the species that conquered our own world through superior warfare," Susan replied. "We are the children of a planet where only the strongest survived. We have been polite because we chose to be, not because we had to be." She looked at the image of New Brisbane on her screen, where rescue ships were already heading down to help the survivors. "You killed our people because you thought we were weak. You were wrong. We were just being nice." Susan turned to her communications. "Officer. Lieutenant Foster, send a message to every government in this sector of the galaxy. Tell them what happened here today. Tell them that humanity is done asking politely." The message that went out across the galaxy was simple, but terrifying. The humans have revealed their true nature. Their exploration ships were disguises. Their restraint was a choice. They have weapons and tactics we cannot match. The age of human weakness is over. Within hours, the news had spread to every world in known space. The species that had been dismissed as harmless newcomers had just destroyed one of the Zephyrian Empire's best fleets without losing a single ship. Admiral Clark looked out at the stars and thought about the classified reports waiting back on Earth. This had been just a small taste of humanity's real military power. If the galaxy wanted to see what humans could really do when they stopped being civilized, they were about to get their wish. The news of the Zephyrian fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. On the council world of Nexus Prime, alien representatives gathered in emergency meetings, trying to understand how the peaceful humans had suddenly become such deadly warriors. Speaker Vexithera stood before the emergency assembly, her forearms trembling as she read the reports. "Honorable members, we have received confirmation from 12 different sources. The entire Zephyrian battle group at New Brisbane has been destroyed. 11 ships completely vaporized, 1 captured. The human fleet suffered no losses." A shocked silence filled the Great Hall. The Talvesh representative, Councillor Morghan, was the first to speak. "That's impossible. The Zephyrians had heavy cruisers with the latest shield technology. Human ships are small exploration vessels." "Not anymore," Vexithera replied, activating a holographic display. "These are the vessels the humans used." The eye. Images showed massive warships bristling with weapons that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. "According to our intelligence, these ships were disguised to look like simple cargo haulers and research vessels." Fear rippled through the assembly. If humans had been hiding ships like these, what else had they been concealing? Meanwhile, light years away, Colonel Steve Patterson was leading the first human ground assault on a Zephyrian military base. His soldiers moved through the alien complex with a precision that spoke of centuries of warfare evolution. They had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Alpha Team, moved to the communications center, Steve ordered through his helmet radio. Bravo Team, secure the weapons depot. Charlie Team, find their command staff. Staff Sergeant Rachel Moore crouched behind cover as alien soldiers fired at her position. The Zephyrian weapons were powerful, but their tactics were predictable. She had studied recordings of alien ground combat for months, learning their patterns and weaknesses. "Danny, give me covering fire," she called to Private Danny Wilson, who was positioned 30 meters to her left. "I'm going to flank them." The Zephyrian soldiers were arranged in a defensive line just like their training manuals said they should be. It was exactly what Rachel had expected. She activated her armor's stealth system and moved around their position while Danny kept them busy with suppressing fire. 2 minutes later, the alien position was overrun. The Zephyrian soldiers had never faced an enemy that used combined arms tactics, electronic warfare, and psychological operations all at the same time. They were trained to fight other aliens who followed similar rules of engagement. "Base secure," Steve reported to his commanders. Enemy forces neutralized, beginning intelligence gathering. Back on Earth, Director Helen Adams sat in her office, deep beneath the Pentagon, reviewing the reports coming in from across human space. She had been waiting for this day for decades. As head of the Human Defense Initiative, she knew better than anyone what humanity was truly capable of. Her assistant, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Harris, knocked on her door. "Ma'am, the President is ready for you. The galactic broadcast is scheduled to begin in 10 minutes. Helen nodded and gathered her files. It was time to tell the galaxy the truth about humanity. She walked to the secure broadcast studio where cameras were waiting to transmit her message to every corner of known space. The studio was designed to look impressive but not threatening. Behind Helen's desk, a large window showed Earth hanging in space, beautiful and peaceful. What the camera didn't show were the massive orbital weapons platforms hidden on the dark side of the moon, or the planet-killer ships waiting in the asteroid belt. "Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1, the technician announced. Helen looked directly into the camera and began to speak. Her voice was calm and measured, like a teacher explaining something to confused students. "People of the galaxy, I am Director Helen Adams of the Human Defense Initiative. For 3 years you have known humanity as a peaceful species interested in exploration and trade. Today, I want to tell you the truth about who we really are." On thousands of worlds across the galaxy, alien leaders watched the broadcast with growing alarm. The human woman speaking to them didn't look like a warrior, but something in her eyes was absolutely terrifying. "You have tested our patience," Helen continued. "You have attacked our colonies, killed our civilians, and dismissed our diplomatic protests. You did this because you believed we were weak. You were wrong." The image behind Helen changed to show footage from the Battle of New Brisbane. Alien viewers watched in horror as human warships tore through the Zephyrian fleet like it was made of paper. "We are not weak. We have never been weak. We are the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and global wars. We are the children of a world where survival meant becoming the ultimate predators. Every day on Earth was a battle, and we won every single one." More footage appeared showing human soldiers in combat. These weren't the peaceful explorers the galaxy had grown used to seeing. These were warriors whose movements were coordinated, with machine-like precision. They used tactics that the watching aliens couldn't even understand. "For 3 years we have been polite. We have followed your rules, respected your customs, and tried to solve our problems through diplomacy. We did this not because we had to, but because we chose to. We wanted to be good neighbors." Helen paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "But you mistook our choice for weakness. You thought our civility meant we couldn't fight. You believed our restraint meant we were afraid. Today you learned the truth." The footage changed again, showing vast shipyards hidden in the outer reaches of the solar system. Thousands of warships under construction, weapons that could crack planets, technologies that the galaxy had never imagined. "This is what we have. been building while you laughed at our diplomatic protests. This is what we kept hidden while you called us weak. This is what we have been saving for the day when talking stopped working. On Nexus Prime, the emergency council session had stopped completely. Every alien representative was watching the human broadcast in stunned silence. Speaker Vexithara's compound eyes were fixed on the screen as she realized the scope of humanity's deception. We have been preparing for this moment since the day we first left Earth, Helen continued. We knew that somewhere in the galaxy, we would meet species that only understood strength. We hoped we were wrong. We wanted to be wrong. But we prepared, anyway, because that's what humans do. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The final set of images showed human military capabilities in full detail. Ships that could destroy entire fleets. Soldiers who moved like ghosts through alien defenses. Weapons that turned the strongest shields into useless decorations. We are giving you this information not to threaten you, but to educate you. You need to understand what you have awakened. For 3 years you have been fighting against human diplomats and peacekeepers. From now on you will be fighting against human warriors. Helen leaned forward slightly, and her voice became harder. We are the species that fought wars for thousands of years before we ever left our planet. We perfected the art of destruction while you were still learning to build. We have weapons you cannot imagine, tactics you cannot counter, and a determination you cannot break. The broadcast was being watched on every civilized world in the galaxy. Stock markets crashed as the implications became clear. Trade routes were abandoned as merchant vessels refused to enter human space without military escorts. But we are not monsters, Helen said, her voice softening slightly. We still prefer peace to war. We still want to be part of the galactic community. We still hope to solve our problems through discussion rather than destruction. She stood up and the camera pulled back to show her full figure. Behind her, Earth continued to turn peacefully in space. But now every alien watching knew what kind of world had produced humanity. The choice is yours. Stop attacking our people, and we will continue to be the peaceful neighbors you first met. Keep attacking us, and you will discover why humans became the dominant species on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. The broadcast ended with a simple message that appeared in every major galactic language. Humanity's true face has been revealed. Choose wisely. Within hours of the broadcast, 3 different alien governments had sent emergency messages to Earth requesting immediate peace negotiations. The Zephyrian Empire formally announced the recall of all military forces from human space. The Talvesh hegemony began drafting a non-aggression treaty. Director Adams sat back in her chair and smiled. Phase 3 of the plan was complete. The galaxy now knew that humanity was not to be underestimated. The question was whether they would be smart enough to learn from that knowledge, or foolish enough to test it further. On her desk, reports were already coming in about alien military buildups in response to the revelation. Some species were preparing for war, unable to accept that the humans they had dismissed were now the most powerful force in the galaxy. Helen picked up her secure phone and dialed a number known only to a handful of people on Earth. Mr. President, she said when the call connected, Phase 3 is complete. The galaxy knows what we're capable of. Now we wait to see who's smart enough to back down and who's foolish enough to fight. The hegemony of Talvesh had made a terrible mistake. 3 days after Director Adams's broadcast to the galaxy, they decided that humanity was bluffing. Their military leaders convinced themselves that the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet had been a lucky surprise attack, nothing more. General Thokmarn, the supreme commander of Talvesh forces, stood before his war council on the fortress world of Kethvor. His slug-like body was covered in the ceremonial armor of his rank, and his small eyes glowed with confidence. The humans got lucky once, he declared to his assembled officers. They caught the Zephyrians off guard with some new weapons, but they are still a young species with limited experience. We will show the galaxy that the Talvesh hegemony does not bow to threats from upstart planets. Admiral Keltar, commander of the Talvesh First Fleet, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had watched the recordings from New Brisbane several times, and something about the human attack patterns bothered him. General, perhaps we should consider the possibility that they were telling the truth about their capabilities. Nonsense, Thokmarn replied with a dismissive wave of his tentacle-like arm. No species develops that kind of military power without fighting major wars. The humans have been peaceful for their entire time in space. They cannot have the experience needed for true warfare. Within hours, the Talvesh First Fleet was moving toward the human colony of New Seattle. It was a beautiful world with crystal-clear oceans and floating cities that housed 2 million human civilians. General Thokmarn had chosen it specifically because destroying such a peaceful place would send a clear message to the galaxy. The attack began at dawn local time. 60 Talvesh warships dropped out of hyperspace above New Seattle and immediately began orbital bombardment. Their weapons were designed to cause maximum terror, targeting population centers and civilian infrastructure. But this time, the humans were ready. Admiral Paul Wright had been waiting in the outer system with the Terran War Fleet's 2nd Battle Group. Unlike the mixed force that had fought at New Brisbane, this was a pure combat formation. 8 heavy dreadnoughts, 20 cruisers, and 40 destroyers, all designed for one purpose. "Sir," reported Captain Linda Hayes from the communications station of the flagship ESV Vengeance, "the Talvesh Fleet is beginning bombardment of New Seattle. Colony defense platforms are responding, but they're outnumbered." Paul studied the tactical display showing the enemy formation. The Talvesh ships were arranged in a standard bombardment pattern, just like their training manuals specified. They had learned nothing from what happened to the Zephyrians. "Signal the fleet," Paul ordered. "Operation Hammer Falls is now active. All ships prepare for immediate hyperspace jump." The Terran War Fleet appeared above New Seattle like an avenging angel. But this time, there were no warnings, no demands for surrender. The humans had already given the galaxy their final warning. Now it was time for consequences. Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Bell stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Vengeance as it powered up its main weapons. She had been promoted after leading the successful assault on the Zephyrian fortress world, and now she was about to witness the full fury of human warfare. "Ma'am," reported Weapons Officer Tony Rodriguez, "all ships report ready to engage. Targeting solutions are locked in." Sandra nodded. "Admiral Wright, the fleet is ready." Paul looked at the Talvesh ships still bombing the civilian population below. His own daughter lived on New Seattle, and he could see the fires spreading across the cities where she had played as a child. "Fire," he said quietly. The space around New Seattle erupted in devastating light. The Terran War Fleet unleashed weapons that made their previous engagement look like a gentle warning. Plasma cannons that could melt through a moon's core. Gravity bombs that crushed enemy ships into singular points. Energy beams that turned entire vessels into expanding clouds of superheated gas. The Talvesh Fleet lasted exactly 17 minutes. Captain Mike Chen, commanding the destroyer Swift Justice, watched through his viewscreen as the enemy formation simply ceased to exist. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Wright, "all 60 Talvesh vessels have been destroyed. Colony defense reports the bombardment has stopped." But Paul wasn't finished. He opened a communication channel to the Talvesh homeworld, knowing that their government would be monitoring everything that happened at New Seattle. "This is Admiral Paul Wright of the Terran Defense Force," he began, his voice carrying across the galaxy to every Talvesh colony and military base. "Your first fleet no longer exists. Your attack on New Seattle has been stopped. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally." The image on the screen changed to show footage of human soldiers in combat. These weren't the explorers and scientists the galaxy had grown used to seeing. These were warriors whose ancestors had conquered their own planet through superior strategy, technology, and ruthless efficiency. "You made the same mistake the Zephyrians made," Paul continued. "You thought our restraint meant weakness. You thought our diplomacy meant fear. You were wrong. We are the children of Earth, the most dangerous world in the galaxy. Every day of our evolution was a battle for survival, and we won every single one." On the Talvesh homeworld of Morgeth, the planetary government watched the broadcast in growing horror. They had expected their fleet to easily destroy the human colony and return home victorious. Instead, they were seeing their most powerful military force erased from existence. Councillor Veltar, the civilian leader of the Talvesh government, tried to maintain his composure as he addressed his military advisors. How is this possible? Our intelligence said the humans only had a few dozen ships. General Thakmarn, his earlier confidence completely gone, could barely speak. The intelligence was wrong. Everything was wrong. These aren't the same humans. We've been watching for 3 years. The truth was finally sinking in across the galaxy. Humanity hadn't become powerful overnight. They had been powerful all along, hiding their true nature behind a mask of peaceful exploration and scientific research. Captain Emma Foster, commander of the human garrison that had taken control of the former Zephyrian fortress world, sent her report back to Earth Command. Sir, Zephyrian resistance has completely collapsed. Their military command structure has surrendered on all occupied worlds. They're requesting immediate peace negotiations. The psychological impact was exactly what human strategists had predicted. Most alien species were used to ritualized combat with established rules and limitations. They couldn't comprehend the total warfare that humans had developed over millennia of conflict on Earth. Dr. Karen Lewis, the xenobiologist who had spent years studying alien military psychology, explained it in her classified report to the Pentagon. Their entire concept of war is based on limited engagements with specific objectives. They fight until one side achieves a clear advantage, then negotiate. They have no experience with a species that fights until the enemy is completely destroyed. The galactic stock markets collapsed completely as species after species realized the implications. Trade routes that had operated for centuries were abandoned overnight. Alien merchants refused to enter human space without explicit guarantees of safe passage. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in complete chaos. Speaker Vexithera could barely maintain order as representatives from dozens of species demanded emergency sessions to address the human threat. Honorable members, she clicked desperately. We must find a way to negotiate with the humans. They have demonstrated military superiority that we cannot match. The Koran representative, a crystalline being whose species had never lost a war, was the first to state the obvious truth. They are not negotiating anymore. They warned us to stop attacking them. We did not listen. Now they are teaching us why we should have. Ambassador Kate Morrison, who had spent 3 years being dismissed and ignored by these same representatives, now found herself in a position of unprecedented power. The aliens who had laughed at her diplomatic protests were now begging for her help. Ambassador Morrison, Vexithera said carefully, surely humanity is willing to discuss terms for peace? Kate looked around the assembly at the terrified alien faces staring at her. These were the same beings who had told her that humans were too weak to deserve justice for their murdered civilians. The time for discussion has passed, she said calmly. You had 3 years to listen to our diplomatic protests. You had dozens of opportunities to stop the attacks on our colonies. You chose violence instead of peace. She activated a holographic display showing the current positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. There were far more of them than anyone had imagined possible. Now you get to experience what human warfare really looks like, Kate continued. We tried to be civilized. We followed your rules. We asked politely for justice. You responded by killing more of our people. The hologram changed to show footage from the battles at New Brisbane and New Seattle. Alien warships being destroyed so quickly and completely that they barely had time to send distress signals. This is who we really are, Kate said. We are explorers and scientists, yes, but we are also the apex predators of the most dangerous world in the galaxy. We spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other before we ever left Earth. 6 months had passed since humanity dropped their peaceful mask, and the galaxy was a completely different place. The great wars that had raged for centuries between alien empires had simply stopped. No species dared to fight anymore, not when humanity was watching from the shadows with weapons that could end civilizations. Fleet Admiral Chris Thompson stood on the observation deck of Terra Nova, humanity's massive new space station positioned at the edge of their expanded territory. The station had been built in just 4 months using the same hidden industrial capacity that had produced their secret war fleets. From here, human forces could reach any corner of the galaxy within days. Admiral, called Captain Kelly Brooks, as she approached with a datapad in her hands. "We've received the final surrender documents from the Koran Crystal Empire. That makes it unanimous. Every major power in the galaxy has now accepted the new peace accords." Chris nodded as he looked out at the stars. Kelly had taken command of the garrison force after her brother Ryan died in the final battle for the Zephyrian homeworld. She was young for a captain, but the war had promoted many people quickly. "What are the terms they agreed to?" Chris asked. "Complete demilitarization of all offensive weapon systems," Kelly replied, reading from her pad. "All military actions must be approved by the Human Defense Council. Trade disputes go through human arbitrators, and they're paying reparations to the families of every human civilian killed in the attacks." Chris smiled grimly. The galaxy's greatest empires, the ones that had dismissed humanity as weak newcomers, were now essentially protectorates under human oversight. It was ironic, but not unexpected. Dr. Maria Santos, the xenobiologist who had spent years studying alien psychology, walked into the observation lounge carrying her final report. She had been analyzing the psychological impact of humanity's revelation on different species across the galaxy. "Admiral," she said, setting down her thick folder of research, "I've completed the comprehensive analysis you requested. The results are exactly what we predicted." "Give me the summary, Doctor," Chris replied. Maria opened her folder and pulled out the key findings. "Most alien species are hardwired for ritualized combat, with established rules and limitations. They literally cannot comprehend total warfare as humans developed it. When they saw us completely destroy the Zephyrian and Talvesh fleets, it broke their understanding of how conflict works." She showed him brain scans from captured alien soldiers. "Look at these neural patterns. When they try to process human military tactics, their thought patterns become chaotic. It's like showing a mathematical equation to someone who has never learned numbers." Chris studied the data with interest. Humanity's greatest advantage hadn't been their technology or their numbers. It had been their complete willingness to fight without limits, something that no other species in the galaxy could understand. "There's more," Maria continued. "The economic impact has been even greater than the military one. Galactic trade was based on the assumption that conflicts would be limited and predictable. When humanity demonstrated unlimited warfare capability, it destroyed confidence in every existing security arrangement. On Earth, President Lisa Carter was meeting with her cabinet to discuss the new galactic order. The woman who had authorized humanity's transformation from diplomats to conquerors now faced the challenge of managing an entire galaxy. "Madam President," said Secretary of Defense Ben Rodriguez, "our military commanders are reporting complete success across all sectors. No alien government has attempted any aggressive action in the past 3 months. They're all too afraid of triggering another demonstration of human capabilities." The president looked at the report spread across the table. Humanity now controlled the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen, but with that power came enormous responsibility. "What about the colonies?" she asked. "Are our people safe now?" "Completely safe," Ben replied. "We have garrison fleets positioned near every human settlement. More importantly, every alien government has issued strict orders to their military forces to avoid any contact with human vessels unless specifically authorized." Ambassador Kate Morrison had returned to Earth for the signing of the final peace treaties. The woman who had spent 3 years being ignored by alien diplomats was now the most important human in galactic politics. Every species wanted to negotiate with her, hoping to secure favorable terms under the new order. "Kate," the president said as the ambassador entered the Oval Office, "I need your assessment of the galactic situation. Are we looking at permanent peace or just a temporary ceasefire?" Kate sat down and considered the question carefully. "Madam President, I believe we've achieved something unprecedented. For the first time in galactic history, there's a single power capable of enforcing peace across all inhabited systems." She pulled out her own reports from recent diplomatic meetings. "The alien governments aren't just afraid of our military. They're afraid of our psychology. They can't predict what we'll do because we don't think like them." The president nodded. "Explain what you mean." "Most species fight until they achieve specific objectives, then they negotiate," Kate said. But humans fight until the enemy is completely defeated. That concept is so alien to them that they can't develop countermeasures for it. Captain Tony Rodriguez commanded the Marine Battalion stationed on the former Zephyrian capital world. His forces had taken control of the planet without firing a shot. The Zephyrian government had surrendered the moment human ships appeared in their system. "Sir," reported Sergeant Major Linda Hayes as she entered his command post, "the local population has submitted the monthly compliance reports. No violations of the peace accords, no unauthorized military activity. They're actually ahead of schedule on the reparation payments." Tony looked at the reports with mixed feelings. These were the same aliens who had spent 3 years killing human civilians, but now they were model citizens under human occupation. Fear was a powerful motivator. "Any resistance movements?" he asked. "None detected," Linda replied. "Our intelligence teams report that most Zephyrians seem genuinely relieved that the fighting is over. They're tired of war, and they're impressed by how efficiently we've organized their society." It was true across the galaxy. Human administrators were bringing order to systems that had been chaotic for centuries. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now cooperating under human oversight, simply because they were too afraid to do anything else. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council had been reformed under human leadership. Speaker Vexithara still held her ceremonial position, but real power now rested with the Human Peace Commission. Commissioner Dave Miller, a former colonel who had led ground forces during the war, now managed disputes between alien governments. His approach was simple. Any species that caused trouble would face the same fate as the Zephyrians and Talvesh. "The Andorian Trade Union and the Centauri Collective have resolved their border dispute," he reported during the weekly council session. Both sides agreed to human arbitration rather than risk military action. The assembly of alien representatives nodded eagerly. None of them wanted to be the next example of what happened when humanity stopped being patient. Ambassador Kate Morrison delivered the closing address to the Reformed Council. The same chamber where she had been dismissed and ignored for 3 years now hung on her every word. 6 months ago, this council told humanity that we were too weak to deserve justice for our murdered civilians, she began. You laughed at our diplomatic protests and encouraged continued attacks on our colonies. The alien representatives shifted, uncomfortably in their seats, remembering their past arrogance. "Today you live under the protection of human military power," Kate continued. "Your worlds are safe from attack because humanity guarantees their security. Your trade routes operate smoothly because human fleets patrol them. Your disputes are resolved peacefully because human arbitrators mediate them." She looked around, the chamber at the faces that had once shown nothing but contempt for her species. "We gave you a choice 6 months ago. Stop attacking us or we would stop pretending to be refined. You chose to continue fighting. So we showed you what humans are really capable of when we stop being civilized." The final statistics were staggering. In 6 months of active warfare, humanity had destroyed over 300 alien warships while losing only 12 of their own. Entire military empires had surrendered rather than face human forces in battle. "The galaxy is now at peace," Kate concluded. "Not because you chose peace, but because humanity enforces it. We kept our promise. We stopped pretending to be refined." As the council session ended, Kate walked to the great windows overlooking the capital city of Nexus Prime. Human patrol ships moved through the sky like mechanical angels, ensuring that the peace would continue. She thought about the classified files back on Earth that showed humanity's true military potential. What the galaxy had seen so far was just a small sample of human capabilities. Hidden shipyards were still building new weapons. Research stations were developing technologies that would make current human vessels look primitive. Humanity had revealed their warrior nature, but they had only shown the galaxy enough to ensure compliance.